Welcome to the IIBA Tampa Bay chapter. Today is November 6th, 2020. It is November 6th, 2025. This is our 190th class since we started this in 2021. Tonight, I have the honor of having Laura Brandenburg come talk to us. She's going to talk to us about the BA framework that builds influence, impact, and authority. Tonight, you're going to discover, gotta move this over. You're going to discover the key responsibilities of a business analyst and how this work adds value to an organization. The business analysis techniques and practices that support each of the 8 steps. Quick tips on how to leverage generative AI to get it up to speed more quickly as a new business analyst. And by mastering these steps, you'll gain the tools to approach projects with confidence, professionalism, and a proactive mindset that creates lasting value. I am looking forward to Laura's presentation. But before we begin, some notes. Let me tell you who I am so you're not wondering. My name is Thea Soren. I'm the president of the Tampa Bay IIBA chapter. I've been a business analyst for nearly 30 years. My career spans industries like medical diagnostics, tax software, and nuclear power, and I've had the honor of contributing to the BABOC and founding the BA Force Multiplier movement. Beyond chapter leadership, I am a business analyst, consultant, trainer, and mentor, supporting professionals from their first steps to their leadership. Today's BA Masterclass is about growth, connection, and impact. Whether you're a new BA or refining your approach, Tampa Bay IIBA is here to support your journey and celebrate your contributions. Let's dive in. For those of you who are new to the IIBA, the International Institute of Business Analysis is the governing body for the business analysts. With about 30,000 members, 120 chapters worldwide, 7 certifications, we are excited about making the world better one business, one project, and one life at a time. I said just now that IIBA is the governing body for business analysts. This means that it's the best known and highly respected certifications, and they're from the IIBA, using the BABOC as a guide. My goal in the next slides is to show you why you might be interested in the IIBA. What are the benefits of joining the IIBA? Access to training provided by chapters across the globe, complimentary access to 11,000 outstanding books, including the BABOC, along with webinars and additional resources, and discounts on certification exams. Of the 120 IIBA chapters, this is the Tampa Bay, Florida chapter, and this is our board. These are the folks who work behind the scenes for your benefit. We appreciate them working so diligently to benefit our participants. In fact, each of them were nominated for Regional Volunteer of the Year Award, and of the 5 finalists in this region, these 3 are finalists. Congratulations and good luck to all 5. IIBA chapters are in major cities around the world. If there isn't an active chapter near you, talk to me and I'll help you get a chapter started, or you're welcome to the Tampa Bay IIBA. Members of the Tampa Bay, Florida chapter are not restricted to residents of Florida, but we have members from all around the globe. If you do not have an IIBA chapter, Tampa Bay could be your chapter. Our vision here at Tampa Bay is building a thriving community of empowered business analysts. Why would you choose to join the Tampa Bay chapter? We offer multiple training sessions each week, including CBAP prep and coaching. You can view our upcoming events at our website and the updates posted across LinkedIn and Facebook. By the end of this year, we'll have put on about 200 events, and all of those events are available on YouTube. You get an index for all those recordings at Bob's Amazing Index here at rpchurchill.com, thanks to Bob Churchill. All of these efforts have resulted in us being nominated for as one of the 5 finalists for the 2025 IIBA Award, or one of the 5 awards that are offered globally by the IIBA. An output of all of those efforts has resulted in these people stepping up to say the IIBA chapter's training and mentoring was a big part of their success in achieving their certification. Of these 28, a majority have gone on to lead IIBA chapters here and around the world because we make leaders here. Things that you need to know. Global Business Analysis Day is being celebrated on November 13th and 14th with presentations from around the world. You'll see here the events start on the 13th for us at 4 o'clock with the Australia events, and then it just works its way around the world. The Americas schedule begins at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the 14th. I get to be a co-host for that, and Laura is going to be presenting. For those of you who will be in Florida for the next few weeks, consider attending the Florida Technology Summit with the theme of cultivating the human touch in the age of AI. We have some codes that will help get you in there for free. Shout out to our partners. Our number one partner group is you, the IIBA members and those who participate in our chapter. We've partnered with over a dozen other IIBA chapters worldwide, and we are mentoring 3 chapters that are just forming. We partnered with groups in the UK and as well as in the Tampa Bay area, and we've partnered with several recruiting companies and training companies. Our goal, is, as always, is to elevate our BA community. I just got word that one of these companies helped one of our people get a job, so it's working. Benefits of our partnerships include discounts to you, our participants. Watermark Learning offers a 40% discount using this code. This means you can get unlimited access to the 1,200 CBAP practice test questions at a 40% discount. Adaptive US, who specializes only in business analysis, offers our participants a 20% discount on all live classes and on-demand courses, excluding IIBA exam vouchers. Adaptive does have an impressive guarantee. If you take the certification course from them, then take the test and you don't pass, they will pay for the fee for you to retake it. That's standing behind their training. And one sale that we have found out about, Mountain Goat Software. If you are interested in certified Scrum Master information or certified Scrum Product Owner information, they have a fantastic sale going on right now. You would want to check it out. Next week, we have the honor of Christy Hughes, DTM, coming to talk to us about the Strength Finder. This is the Clifton Strengths Finder test. She's been leading it for us at work, and I cannot tell you how impactful it has been for me. I thought I knew all this stuff. It's a big deal, guys, and it really has opened my eyes to a lot of things about me and my relationships with other people who have different strengths and understanding where they can do good and where they have challenges, as well as myself. The week after that, on November 20th, we'll have the last meeting of 2025, talk about what we've accomplished so far, and then talk about what we plan for 2026. We do have big plans. The CBAP prep training, SDLC workshop, and so many other trainings that you've told us is valuable. I hope you attend to get the scoop on things to prepare for our first meeting in 2026. That will be on January 1st. So just to be clear, we have been having meetings every single week, sometimes 2 or 3 meetings every single week. So we are taking off from Thanksgiving through the end of the year, and then January 1st, we will be back. The first meeting will be at 5 o'clock, and it's IIBA membership. What's in it for you? We don't have the 7 to 8 o'clock scheduled yet, but other things that you've been asking for is the SDLC event. It's going to take place. We're hammering down the dates. It's going to be on Saturdays for several hours instead of across 1 hour per week. Announcements will be on our website beginning July 1st. Also, we have presenters that we're scheduling for 2026 now. We have a speaker application for anyone who's interested. Just reach out to me and I'll be glad to send that to you. But these folks are being scheduled and you'll love the good that they bring. This is a lot of dates. So to keep track of it, I encourage you to join our LinkedIn group and follow our events on our website. In fact, our LinkedIn group right now has over 1,500 people, thanks to our Vice President of Marketing, Cliff Gray. So now to our presentation. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you, Thea. I have seen a lot of chapter overviews and none that were so had so much just powerful information and clarity. So thank you for that. Yeah. And thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here and to, I see some familiar names and also some new names. And this right now is I guess it's not my last, it's my last scheduled speaking gig for 2025, but we've got the IIBA Global BA Day coming up. So that might be my last one. We'll see. So we're here tonight to talk about the Business Analyst Success Framework, and I'm going to share what that is. Thea already shared a lot about me. I do have a pretty deep background as a business analyst, consultant, been a hiring manager. I've been training now for 17 years. And this has become my thing and my passion. So I do have two books, How to Start a Business Analyst Career, and also more recently, The Value Driven Business Analyst, which is the framework we're going to talk about tonight is really the core structure of the book. So it's a great next step if like you hear like what you hear here and want to dig in further and learn more about the framework. And then I also, my primary way of working is through our training that I offer through Bridging the Gap, and the Business Analyst Blueprint program covers a lot of what we're talking about in more depth as well. But really what we're here to talk about tonight is the key responsibilities of the BA, this 8-step business analysis process framework that really is a overview of what to do as a business analyst on a typical software project. And while it's not an AI talk, I feel like we can't talk lately without including AI in some way. So I'm going to weave in some ideas about how to use AI to get up to speed more quickly, to be more productive and effective as a business analyst. I do like to keep an eye on the chat, so I will have some prompts along the way, as well as, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to get those in, and I'm going to try to leave a bit of time at the end for questions as well. So on that note, I would just like to reflect, and I know we're just at the very cusp here, but what is happening in your world right now that made this topic, this talk relevant to you? What do you most want to leave today's session with, or the actual question on the screen? Why is it important that you're here this evening? Right? You took time away from your family, away from other things you could have been doing. Feel free to add it to the chat if you would like to. I'd love to be able to tweak and adjust based on your intentions, but also know that even if you don't share it in the chat, just the act of like reconnecting with that intention is going to tune your attention into the content and the teaching that will serve you the most and make sure whatever nuggets you need come through for you. So why is it important that you're here today? Thea says to get a fresh perspective. Yeah, it's always nice to just kind of hear things from a new perspective. So I appreciate it, Thea, because I'm sure there's very little that's going to be new to you from tonight, but you never know what's gonna happen. All right. Keep sharpening the axe. Thank you, Philip. Yeah, I think it's amazing that this chapter has events almost every week because it's a lot. It's like it gives you that constant tool to keep dialed in and to always have something new to learn and keep sharpening. Staying connected. It's a great one, Carol. Understanding the framework. Thank you, Cassie. All right. Thank you for sharing those. That's great. You'll definitely come away with an understanding of the framework. So before we get into the framework, though, I just want to take a moment and consider like the big picture of how we actually create value as business analysts, because we're going to get into the details and it's going to feel very tactical and process oriented, which is very important. That's how we operate as BAs. But like also it's important to stay tuned in to the big picture. So this is the business analyst manifesto that I channeled really when I very first started my blog, Bridging the Gap, 17 years ago. And it still tends to resonate with people today. So out of chaos, we create order. Out of disagreement, we create alignment. Out of ambiguity, we create clarity. But most of all, we create positive change for the organizations we serve. And to me, this is the why behind business analysis, sort of the why and the what we do. And if everything needs to support that, if it's not supporting alignment, clarity, and positive change, it's really a candidate for disruption or a candidate for kind of letting it go of like true sharpening of the axe of like, this is like something maybe I don't need to be doing now so that I can make space for the things and the activities that do. So with that context, let's just look at the entirety of the framework. So this is the 8-step business analysis process that I've been teaching for probably close to a dozen years at this point. It's a foundation of a lot of what we teach at Bridging the Gap. And we're going to go into these steps, each of these steps in a little bit more depth, but I just want to give a high level overview now. So we start with getting oriented. It's learning enough to make an impact, to really start asking intelligent questions, right? And then we ask why. That's the primary business objectives. Ensure that we're solving the right problem, and answer that question. Why are we doing this? Not what's the scope, we get there next, but why, right? And then we move into what are the possible solutions that we could kind of come up with to meet those business needs, and gain agreement on that scope from all the stakeholders on the project. And then from there, we say, okay, now that we know why we're doing this, what we've done, what's my business analysis plan? Not the whole project plan, but what are the deliverables I need to create? Who needs to be involved? And how am I going to see this through? And then from there, we implement that plan. We define the detailed requirements, and we do all of the meat of what often feels like the biggest part of the business analysis role. And Cliff says, "Oh, intelligent questions. Where do you find those?" Yes, they're magic, right? They just pop into our heads like magic. No, they come in from good analysis and good analytical thinking. And in the step 5, we ask a lot of questions, and from there we really shift, right? So up to here, we're really often driving the process. Not every BA owns step 1 through 3, so like sometimes we're really stepping in 4 and 5. But then we're more in a support role where we're supporting the technical implementation, we're supporting the business to make sure that they are ready and able to change. And then we assess the value. We take a big step back and assess the value. What was the ROI of what we actually delivered? And also, it's a great time to take a look at our business analysis practice and see what we might improve. So this process is geared more towards a software project, but it doesn't have to be a big project. It could be a smaller project. I'm going to give some sample projects here in a minute. And I also want to just say, it's very linear and prescriptive sounding. I would say consider this as a guide, not a prescription. And that also I teach it in a linear way because business analysis in a normal day, you might be doing multiple aspects of different steps. But when you try to teach somebody the reality of being in multiple steps at the same time, it's just very confusing and overwhelming. So we look at each step one at a time so that you can do some concrete learning and development around it. And you can also assess, are there steps that we're kind of skipping as an organization? Or are there steps that we're doing really well? Which is actually my next kind of question for you, which I would love to hear. Are there any steps here that represent what you would think of as a gap in your current practice? Or are there any where you're like, this one is, I'm really strong in? That would be an interesting reflection to hear if you're open to sharing that in the chat as well.
One thing that I
Yeah.
see as a
Yeah.
challenge in every organization is defining scope. And I
Mm,
know that we need to define scope, but sometimes there's so many things that are unknown or it's so complex that you do the best you can, and then you keep reevaluating
yeah.
as you keep doing discovery.
For sure. For sure. And like just because we have scope and even if we have a formal sign off and gate review, depending on our organization's process, doesn't mean it doesn't change. Right. So yeah, but having something that the team can use is also a really big momentum builder. So otherwise that's when we feel like we're going off in a gazillion different directions. Um, Let's see. So Cliff says also defining scope, Carol, bridging the stakeholders in multiple areas, utilizing multiple terminologies. Yeah, that's a good not a good challenge, but a good challenge to be aware of and starting to, be often the BA can be the person who is the translator between those and starts to develop a common language. And scope creep becomes a big problem when you don't have it documented. Yeah, fair point. Okay, so let's talk about some of the types of projects that the framework can help you on. And I mentioned that overall it's more of a software specific framework, but we've had a lot of BAs use it in different ways. So it could be a system implementation or migration, right? When you're moving from one system to another, you need to understand, why are we doing this? What are the features we need? What are the business processes that we need to support? How do we configure that system? And then how do we move data, back and forth or either between two systems or from one system to another? When you're in a business process improvement project, that why part is like, why are we improving this? What's our goal here? What could we improve? And do we need any software to support that improvement? Or is just re-engineering the process in and of itself enough of an improvement? reporting, we have a team of BAs who go through our programs on this course specifically, or on this process specifically, as part of their onboarding, who are BI analysts. And I met with their manager because I was like, what is it that you're really like? How is it fitting into that role specifically? Right. And she had talked about how before a reporting analyst that on her team even started like figuring out what the data was available or what that report might look like, she wanted them to understand what the business user was doing or what decision that person wanted to make. And so they needed to look at that business process, which was the why behind the report, and then go into like what might that report look like. What data do we have? Does it actually help them make that decision? And so they're really taking a big picture look at something that can really be like, oh, we just need to like configure this report and make sure it goes out on a weekly basis. But they're really taking a holistic view of that. And those are some of the bigger types of projects, right? But also an enhancement, what can seem like a small request, like a field on a page, or configuring a little bit of a workflow, is really part of a larger business process. It impacts a lot of different aspects, and so you still want to know, why are we doing this? What's the scope of this change? And if you are in a more agile environment, it might be that you use a process like this on like a user story level, or you're managing like sprint by sprint your backlog and thinking of that as your scope, right? So there's different ways to think about scope. The steps kind of run through pretty iteratively regardless. And are there other examples? If you have any other example projects that you want to share, I always love to hear about what people are working on as well. And Cliff says, absolutely, everyone. One of the improvements everyone forgets that we should be continuing with. Yeah, is the one we should be continuing with. Okay. All right. So now we're going to just dive into each of those steps in a little bit more detail. And some of them I'll kind of briefly go over a little bit more, and some of them we'll do a bit of a deep dive on scope in particular and business objectives. Those are ones I tend to see people either struggle with or feel like there's an opportunity to grow in those. Right. So getting oriented, the piece I really want to say about getting oriented, it's really, there's a lot of different things that we want to do to understand where a project is at. And the biggest one is like, what is actually our role? And for those of you who've been in the industry for a long time, know like roles differ between organizations. But if you're newer to the profession, or you've been in one company for a while, or maybe you've been in maybe two organizations or two different roles, like sometimes like it's a surprise that a BA role in one organization, or even one team within an organization, can be completely different than a BA role in another organization. So just taking the time to understand, what are the expectations, or are they expecting me to define the role? And if so, what is the team that I'm working with, and how does my role relate to the other members of the team, is really a huge way to avoid kind of going off in the absolutely wrong direction and doing things that aren't valued in the long run. You also want to understand who the stakeholders are. If there's any history, it's really common to start projects in the middle, to take over a project that was started and stopped years ago, to take over from another business analyst, right? All some scenarios people face, as well as just understanding what are the existing systems and processes in place at a high level, because you might be changing or leveraging those capabilities as you go through this. Carol says some of the more challenging areas are rediscovering requirements previously included in programs. Yeah, so sometimes I wouldn't advise this as a practice to necessarily advocate for, but some, like those big enterprise ERP systems, if you're changing a major system, you might have a project that just focuses on understanding those existing systems and processes and mining the requirements and defining those processes. And it might be a few months of work to get to the point where you understand the current state well enough that you can try to figure out to replace it. It's not the default, and it tends to be activities that people don't want to fund as much. So often we have to figure out how to do it while also moving forward on the change. Okay. So then, if our goal is to deliver value, which I think most of us want to do, the next piece is to understand what value looks like in the context of this project, of this work, of this team. which is really means asking about the business objectives. And I just wanted to affirm, like, business objectives can go by many, many different names, and they can also be hosted in many, many different documents. So they can be called business requirements, business need, desired outcome, the return on investment, the KPIs, right? So those would all be words that talk about the same general idea of why are we doing this? What is the outcome that we're trying to achieve? And they also can go in a lot of different deliverables. So I'll show an example here in a few minutes of the scope statement that we teach at Bridging the Gap, which really just kind of winnows it down to some core sections. But a lot of BAs use a business case or a project charter. And often these documents might be created by the project manager or the product manager, right? So it's not always the BA who creates them, but as the BA, you can still ask questions around them, you can still contribute to them, and you definitely still need to understand those objectives, even if they're kind of handed to you in a document that's, approved or worked on before you get involved. So what do those business objectives look like? And this is like, even in the training, just this week, I was doing a training we're running a private cohort or a public cohort of the BA Essentials Masterclass that goes through this whole process. And so many people were still sharing really solution outcomes as their business objectives. And so I want to share this example of what some objectives look like, meaning like measurable outcomes, not what are the parts and pieces of the part of the solution. Right. So some examples, this would be for a mobile application and a home insurance company. It's a bit of a fictitious project, but we could have one to reduce the average time a claim agent spends preparing and submitting a claim from 8 hours to 6 hours or less. It's really tangible. We could have one for reducing follow-up calls to check on claim status by 50%, and also follow-up calls by contractors. Right, and then increase adoption of homeowner use of the online web application by 30%. So that would give teams like an idea of where to focus with the mobile app based on the kinds of outcomes that we want. So, like, and it doesn't, there's numbers here. Not everybody has access to numbers and metrics. So it could also be reduce the time that a claim agent spends without being specific. Like, we don't know that it's 8 hours now, but we know if we eliminate 5 of 10 steps, we're going to shrink that amount of time. And then maybe we start to measure it. So this would also be the time in a project where if you don't have metrics, and that's important, you might start to measure or put in place measurement systems to capture some baseline data so that when you do release the change, you can show the differential. But again, not all the time do we have the ability to do that, but kind of a next level practice. Also a great way to use generative AI, so you can describe your project and ask for ideas. Often stakeholders don't love to give you this information. They don't know, they just want what they want, right? And so we often have to say, is this why we want it? Like, here's some objectives. Like, I did a bit of research and here's the reasons that people implement systems like this. Which ones of these feel the most important to you? Right. And even having that conversation, even if it's not a formally like sanctioned document or kind of gets part of something, gives you much bigger context that you can use when you start exploring the requirements, as well as to share with the rest of the team. So that brings us to defining scope. And this is a big, kind of a hard to read slide. I do have this, I was trying to paste it in the chat. Oh, just 1 second. I thought I had the link I had copied it. So if you do want to download this template, you are more than welcome to. It's for free on our website. But essentially, this is like a 2 to 3 page document that encapsulates what the scope is, like what's in and out for this project. It includes those benefits or those business objectives, the capabilities, the assumptions and constraints. I actually just redid the organization of this particular lesson in the course. And the tip that I want to share with you from here is, even though this constraint section is like all the way at the bottom, it actually makes sense to ask these questions first. So when you're thinking about the scope, we know why, right? We've kind of uncovered why. So business objectives definitely first, as well as constraints. Constraints like, what's the budget? Do we have to stay within a specific timeline? Do we have to, use an existing system architecture? So most organizations aren't going to revisit their ERP system or CRM system choice like every time they want to add a new field, right? So you're going to be working within an architecture or some solutions, and there's going to be a constraint that you work within, often those existing licenses or tools or what's available to your business, and leveraging those existing capabilities versus building from scratch. So starting with constraints actually encourages a lot of creativity, and allows you to really explore alternate solutions within a specific constraint. I do want to give you, I will share these slides after. I'm assuming there's a way to share slides, Thea. Okay. Otherwise, I was going to say you could message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to, this is a lot to write down. I wouldn't like you to have to write down the whole template. But one way that we've been practicing drafting a scope statement is to using that template. So if you look back, this template, all this blue text is annotations describing what goes in that section, right? So I originally wrote templates like this because I sold them on our website and then used them to train BAs who were unfamiliar with these. But it's also a great way to train AI by uploading an annotated template like that and saying, using this template, please draft draft the scope statement. And so basically this prompt is giving you a place to say, here's the industry we're in, here's what I know about the project so far. Obviously, the more detail you can give it, the better. And then can you draft the scope statement? And the results that we often get from this, we don't have quite enough time to go through it tonight and to kind of demo it, but there was a time I did this at a different event, and like everybody uploaded it, and I was like, well, so is this a good working draft? Right? It's not going to be 100% because you need to use your own intelligence and your awareness around what's really happening to edit it, but it can give you a really good draft to start from. So you're not starting with just this blank template and some instructions, but some actual possibilities of, here's some capabilities, here's how we could rewrite the business objectives, here's some constraints to consider, right? So a good way to kind of get a kickstart. You can do this with any template you might have in your organization. The annotations, though, are really important in terms of how to train AI to get the kind of result that you want. Okay. My favorite visual model to add to a scope statement is a system context diagram. And this is one of those diagrams that really helps prevent gotchas at the end. So this basically shows a central system, whatever system is in the primary scope, and how data flows to and from the other systems within the architecture of the organization. And you're not getting specific on the API or kind of what it is, but kind of what kind of information flows back and forth so that you can see the scope. Because it's always, in my experience, it's those last minute, oh, we forgot that we have to integrate with system X, that completely hoses a project at the end, because for whatever reason, those integrations are the most complicated to build. They involve multiple teams, right? And like, those are the things that really catch projects at the end of the game. And so having this big picture analysis of what this looks like and using it as a tool to be like, is there anything we haven't thought of, can really help bring those requirements and capabilities to light earlier rather than later. Okay, so we've gone through steps 1 through 3. I just want to pause in case there's any questions or comments or anything anybody'd like to share. Cliff said it looks like a master data integration diagram. Yeah, it could, that is probably another name. One of the things I found working in business analysis, right, is the same technique has sometimes 4, 5, 6 different names. Yeah, or really a similar. I think there's also what did I find? A level 0, something level 0. A data flow diagram level 0 is really a system context diagram. Yeah, that one I was like, what? Okay. All right. Okay, So that brings us to step 4 on the BA planning. And this is when you come up with, this is what I'm going to do to take that scope, which is going to be pretty high level, and make sure that all the details for the implementation, that whatever the BA work needs to do so that the implementation team can do what they need to do is ready. Doesn't mean that they're implementing from those, because there might be another software design or kind of another layer of design that needs to happen, but that the BA work is clear and communicates, what the BA work needs to do. And that's very context specific based on the role, which is why it's so important to understand the role and how the BA role interacts with the other aspects of the team. So you want to figure out what types of deliverables, what are the specific deliverables, what stakeholders need to be involved, and also are the timelines. And the stakeholder involvement, I think, is the piece that really solidifies the purpose of the plan. Because one thing to plan your work and to start to put together, this is what I think I can do in a given time frame. But we are so dependent on stakeholders, both from the business and the technology side, to be able to meet those deadlines. And most of the deadlines I've ever met were not because of my work. They were because somebody kind of couldn't make a decision, or there was a project I was on where the business stakeholder was only in the office 2 days a week. She had a very part-time role, and they had told me, well, you're going to just be able to work with like other people and figure out all these details. And it turned out she was like the single bottleneck of all the decision making. And so I couldn't actually make those decisions for her. I couldn't get more time on her calendar, and it delayed the entire business analysis effort. So the stakeholder involvement piece is really, really key in terms of getting buy-in and also educating your stakeholders on what is it going to take to be part of this project from a BA perspective. So this is an example of what a BA plan could look like. You've got, the estimated effort. How much time do you feel like you will put into this? What duration is that? How long do you need? Because often, the stakeholder time dictates you can't just, get a whole entire 20 hours of work done on one deliverable in 1 week. Often that needs to be spanned out. Then you would put the start and end dates, what stakeholders you need involved, as well as assumptions and dependencies. And once you have your dependencies and your estimated effort and duration, I have found that AI is really, really good at figuring out the start and the end, or you have to have the first start date, but right, like you can put the plan in and ask AI to calculate out the rest of the dates. And often you'll do that and you'll be like, no, 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 like that's impossible. Right. And why it's impossible is because there's an assumption, a dependency that you've missed, or you're like, oh, wait, I'm actually not working on this project 40 hours a week. I'm working on it 15 hours a week because I have other things going on. Right. And so you can really surface the criteria that influence the plan and get more aware of them as those dates get generated for you, so that you can get it to generate the dates that actually make sense. So having AI generate them, even when it comes up with bad dates, often it challenges you to reframe some of those things. Okay. That brings us to step 5, the detailed requirements. So this is where often we're pressured to dive in right away, where we might feel most comfortable to dive in right away. But basically, for every deliverable that we've identified on our plan, we go through this process of discovery, analysis, review, and validation, which might come up with more questions, right? And so we have to do more discovery and more analysis until we're finally clear that yes, this is ready for the next step. This process is ready to be improved. This software is ready to be built, like whatever that next step is from that particular deliverable. And we want to go through that process for each deliverable on our business analysis plan. This slide, I really need to move into the step 4 slide, but it's an overview of the techniques that we teach at Bridging the Gap. But really when you're putting things on your business analysis plan, be thinking about, like, we don't want to add deliverables just to add deliverables, but we also want to have enough perspectives on the project that we see things from different perspectives. And so that's what the whole business analyst blueprint is trying to give from a visual perspective, looking at both the business, software, and information level. So those are three very different perspectives on the requirements. The business being like, how does the business process go? What is the workflow from end to end from a business or a customer journey perspective? The software being, what does the software actually need to do functionally, right? Which we might model in use cases, wireframes, user stories, and then also information level. And a lot of BAs kind of miss this particular perspective of what data or what information supports that software or is managed by that software that supports the process. And so that information level gives you an entirely different lens that often helps everything click into place. When you get really clear on what the relationships are between key concepts, as well as how data flows either between systems or is stored within a system. And as a BA, you're not getting into that nitty gritty, like what are the primary keys and what's the structure, but you are conceptually mapping the data to show how the business thinks about that information and make sure that whatever database is built represents what the business wants and how the business thinks about information. And we had that question about terminology, right? And when you're dealing with stakeholders who have very different terminology, a first great step would be a glossary of just what are the key terms, or really what are the variations that people are using that mean the same thing, but also looking at an entity relationship diagram or a business domain model that shows how those key concepts relate together can bring a lot of aha moments from a group that is communicating in very different ways. And the last thing I'll say about this is like the BA. So the BA framework is the underlying supportive steps. So, from here, all the techniques are represented above in the framework we're speaking to tonight is there along the bottom. Oh, well, thank you, Simonis. I appreciate that. Yeah. So, again, we talk through specific with the scope statement with any one of these deliverables, you can use AI to create a rough first draft, right? So that's a great, it's a great time saver these days. You could break apart a document, a process into user stories, right? You can have AI help you take one set of information and develop another set of information. But you could also upload your draft and ask for questions like, what should I be asking? Or what would you improve about this? Or how would you structure this document so it's more clear and effective? I've been doing this a lot with like proposals and different things, and I upload it to AI, and AI gives me all kinds of ideas of things to improve, and I get to choose and pick and choose which ones are going to actually work for me. But also, what could you improve? Like, what are the things that you could ask for from a capability or feature perspective as well? So, both what could you inherently just improve about that deliverable, and what could you improve about the content in that deliverable or the requirements? And you could also, if you have, I think this is where like the tools are going to catch up. But this idea of like if you had meeting notes, right, and you could load those in, and then you could have your use whatever deliverable you're working on, if it's um, like a written deliverable, can you identify what updates are needed, and then approve those updates? Can you make the updates to that deliverable and give me a new copy? Right. So starting to think about how to integrate different pieces of information, feed those into AI, and then using that to actually make some of the updates as well. And hopefully the tools start to get better where we can have that be a little bit more seamless. Yeah, right now my favorite Gen AI tool for day to day is Chat GPT. I built like almost a relationship with Chat GPT in terms of training it to do the kinds of things that I want it to do. One of the most common ones within organizations is Microsoft Copilot. So I say use whatever you have access to and whatever your company feels comfortable with you using, versus trying to go outside the system to bring in tools that may create security risks. That's really important with AI as well. Okay. So just as a recap, we got to step 5, and I'm going to kind of breeze through the next few steps because this is where PAs shifts to more of a supportive role, and I do want to make sure that we leave some time for questions as well. Okay, so the technical implementation, right? So this, I think, a really critical piece still to be involved in. Historically, we threw things over the wall and just like, oh, right, I wrote all the requirements, like, and we got assigned to other projects. That might still be happening. You might still be assigned to other things, but where can you find opportunities to be involved, to be part of those discussions, to review the test plans and test cases, to make, and what you're doing here, your real goal is to ensure that the business objectives are met by the decisions that get made as the technology gets designed and developed. And things change, like constraints come up that you weren't expecting. The feasibility of a requirement felt like that seems really feasible, but then you get into the details and the developer's like, it doesn't work the way I thought it did, right? So that's where you're proactively managing some of those issues, helping orchestrate those changes, making sure that not just to be a go-between between the dev and the business, but to ensure that as those changes come up, that the impact of those changes across the entire project are considered. Right. So, that's why you want to be in the middle and not have maybe somebody circumvent and just, well, I can just ask the business what they want. And the business might not think about all the things that could impact, and definitely available to answer questions, and provide clarity as we go along. And the same with the business. So, one of if you've heard me speak before, you probably heard this story, but yeah, I came into a project and they had implemented this document management system. And the goal was to reduce paper and to make things more efficient, like two very clear, like less time of people on these processes, reduction of paper. So very two efficiency related objectives. And they never trained this one particular team on how to use it. And they actually didn't configure the system to help them use it effectively. And so they were getting their deliverable in the document management system, printing it out, writing on it, uploading it again, passing it along. Like they used to just pass that document along between the desks, but then they were like printing it out again and writing what they thought they did because they didn't have the annotations turned on the right way. Right. And that was not the I mean, it was a technology not meeting the solution, but it was also that team wasn't trained on how to do it. Nobody really looked at their future state process. They didn't update the assets. And so they were doing what they thought they needed to do to be in compliance with the process. But like the business objective failed, right? So helping the business implement, it's really change management, but I think it's key for the business analysis to at least ensure that that's happening in some formal way and that people know how to use the system and not default to workarounds or going back to business as usual. So it's really hard to retrain people. It's a really key aspect of the process. All right. And then that brings us to step 8, which is when we get to celebrate all of our successes, right? Like who we love to celebrate successes, but also not all projects end in success, like the one that I was just talking about, right? So sometimes we really have to tease out, like, yes, we had this original goal, we got off track somewhere along the way, we ended up building this thing, nobody's really excited about it, but we made progress, right? Like, what progress did we make? And what value did this create? Whether it's an updated business process, a new software that got implemented, like, and what can we do now going forward? Are there new projects? Is there a phase 2 or an update that we should be considering? So really looking for whatever measurable data that you can communicate, like we actually did reduce time, but in lieu of measurements, like we eliminated 5 manual steps, like you can show that visually on a process map, or telling the story of how the customer's experience is different because this new tool was in place, or to show that, we've had X number of customers log in or create accounts or put data into that new system, right? So you can start to tell the story of what's the ROI that was created. Not everybody has time for this step or is even given the ability to do this step, but I do think the more we do this, the more we build positive momentum within our organizations, and the more we also build more credibility for the business analysis role, because we're holding that thread all the way through. And not often is there anybody else who's holding that thread of value all the way through the project. And that's really what step 8 is all about. Okay. So that brings us back to our full framework again. We kind of walk through each of these steps and kind of a few of the details behind what's involved in each of them. And again, I would love to see any questions, or if you want to come off mute and ask questions. But I do always like to leave with a positive idea. And that's my mantra, one of my favorite mantras, which is on every project, every successful project, you'll find a business analyst. They may not have the title, but there's somebody doing this work, pulling the business objectives through to the scope, collaborating with the business and technology stakeholders to create that kind of shared understanding and celebrating the results at the end. So this is how you drive value and amplify your impact. And I'm so, so grateful to be here tonight. So thank you for the opportunity. I'd love to have some questions if we have time. We have at least a few minutes for that.
We do. We have 10 minutes, and I'm sure that we have lots of questions for you.
Yeah.
Anybody want to come off mute and ask Laura a question?
Always danger of ending early. Hey, Philip.
Hey, yeah, thanks very much for that. That was fantastic. Yeah, just to go through that whole process as well. But you're mentioning about the use of AI in creating certain artifacts, and yeah, I've kind of found that a game changer as well. But just curious, like you talked about the project charter, but yeah, whether there's other aspects of applying AI, or what you found the greatest leverage in that has been for those sort of artifacts.
Yeah, I think using it for drafts is a big one, but also for
Mm.
research and identifying questions, right? So I
Mm.
don't know if you, like, a lot of these get stuck of like, what questions should I ask? But uploading a deliverable you already have, and what questions should I be asking? Or here's the
Mm.
meeting I'm going into. What questions can I be asking? Um, I've
Yep.
also heard BAs loading in transcripts and asking AI for feedback on how they ran the meeting. So if you have access to transcripts,
Ah.
uh, and then kind of I would say the most forward thinking aspect I've seen people doing is using some of the vibe coding tools to create prototypes in a meeting. So if you could like,
Mm.
because a vibe coding tool, you can actually have a description. I have not done this personally, so I just want to
Mhm.
couch that. But like, I watched somebody do it today. I was in an all-day AI training today, and I was like, okay, now I
Yeah.
kind of see how it could work. But basically, it will take a textual description of what you want to achieve and create a working, functional looking website. It's not necessarily deployable, right? But like,
Mm.
and so if you can do that in a meeting and you can say, have some discovery, put a summary together, put that into a
Mm.
tool, and then show that back to business users to get
Oh,
that, like,
wow.
oh, yes, I want that, but not that, like in real time.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff used to create a lag. Like, okay, let me go back and
Mm.
create some
Yeah.
wireframes and then bring that back to have that discussion. So I would say
Mm.
that's like the cutting edge of what BAs are doing in practice right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
real-time
that sounds
wireframing.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it certainly
yeah.
expedite the whole process. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I would say beyond that, Thea and I have been in conversations, like Fabricio Laguna is leading this initiative of not just AI for BAs, but BAs for AI, right? So where can you be part of organizations actually adopting AI, and how
Mm.
to engineer agents into business processes, I would say is, you got to have your own
Oh,
fluency and literacy first. But
yeah.
that's really what is exciting in terms of the go forward opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, just streamlining that whole process and cutting out some of the grunt work, and even in
Yep.
terms of just like, writing user stories or whatever, used to spend a lot of time trying to craft those, but now it's just like, oh, well, I'll just come up with the first version, feed
Yeah.
that through, see if it can improve it, and yeah, it just always just levels it up. So,
Yeah.
and also, yeah, I think just having that outside perspective as well, sometimes it sees things you don't see, or some things that are missing as well. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for that question, Philip.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else using AI in different ways? I know I kind of went through a ton of different ways, but other things that people are doing.
I'm
AI is
Sarita.
doing brand new things every week.
Mm-hmm.
Sarita, do you have something?
Yeah, so I have recently joined, like not recently, like 6 months back, banking. Earlier, most of the experiences in insurance. So what I am using AI for nowadays, I have a foundation requirements for my project, and I'm trying to understand. I read by line, but after reading, I'm putting that in the AI tool because it's a banking, so they have their own tool. And then I'm asking to explain AI what it is. And then I'm asking my questions, whatever I'm not understanding. Like, I feel I'm getting too much dependent on AI, which is
Mhm.
like somehow it's a fear also as of now that if should I use that much? But yeah, it is helpful for now for me.
Well, so is banking a new domain for you?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's really the way to think about it, right? Like you would have to research that domain somehow,
Yeah.
right? And so as long as the information you're getting is accurate and you still are also validating it with the actual
Yeah.
business users. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have to do the workshops. I have to
Mhm.
present those requirements. So that's why I'm trying to understand as much as before I present to the people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Simon says building employees and agents automated connected to MCP servers. So that is cutting edge. I only learned today what MCP means. So
Seamus
I'd
is
have to look it back up if anybody wants to know what it means, what it stands for. But it's
Seamus is
basically
a-
the data layer that connects AI, right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
nice.
Exciting stuff.
Model context protocol, Carol says.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Quick question. What do
Yes.
what will you recommend for someone that is interested in learning AI as a BA? Where do you think that person should start?
Yeah. Where are you at right now with it, Cassie?
Well, I can use it. I know some really nice prompt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So, right. And is your organization deploying AI? And
yeah, they
okay.
integrated Copilot recently.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say, is there a task force or a group that's guiding that maybe you could try to be involved with or provide user feedback for, like kind of getting involved in like what's happening with the next version of what your organization's doing with AI? And then certainly, how can you integrate, like, what are the workflows that maybe your business users could be using Copilot for? So, like, personally using it as a BA, but then also when you're on a project, like listening for those pain points where, like, oh, have you thought about using Copilot to do X?
Okay.
Right. And kind of building that into the business processes as you are doing that analysis.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
some ideas. Yeah, thank you.
Seamus says for work, I can use Copilot and make agents. I use them to record meetings, then put them into the agent and creates a summary of the meeting.
That is incredible.
Let's go back to elicitation. We talked about using Copilot to Vibe, not Copilot, Vibe to create sample websites, to see, is this what you mean? So you can see it in real life. Figma and Balsamic are also tools that are super easy to learn. And you could make it, is this the screen you want? Where do you want this button? You can put it in that way. So if your organization isn't allowing you to use Vibe or something like that, you do have these other options.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Laura? Okay.
Yeah, I'll say most big companies are very restrictive about the AI. You got to be careful, but
Very.
that's one of the advantages with Copilot is if you set it up right, you are in your own arena. You're not building their AI,
Yeah.
and the data you're pointing to is yours, not anybody else's. So,
It's important. You got to follow those rules for security.
oh yeah, and it's only as good as the data you point it to. I mean,
Well, it's definitely one of those things where
Mhm.
you put bad data in, you're going to get bad results. So that's
Oh,
why
yeah.
we need BAs to get good data to put in it, and then we can get good results.
Yeah.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of our time. Laura, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. We hope that you'll want to come back again sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Week we have Chrissy Hughes going to talk about strengths finders, and I really encourage y'all to come back and hear Chrissy and follow Laura on social media. Laura has classes. She does webinars periodically. Sometimes they're at no cost, and sometimes there is a nominal cost. But Laura's been one of the leaders in the business analysis industry. Regardless of your industry, she has been one of the people that people go, she is the person I found first. That's how I became a BA. And she continues to be a leader. And we're so appreciative that she's part of our organization of all the BAs that we know. Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Thea.
Laura.
Thank you for having me. It's been a delight. Happy Thursday, everyone.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.